This podcast and every other podcast that I make is brought to you by Patreon.
How you doing, Mike? Hi.
Good. How are you?
I'm very busy, just really busy. My fight is April 15th, which means it is now a month and a half away. And that means you have to train or at least fight twice a day, which while working a full-time job and trying to make content and dealing with family stuff is a lot. It is. I have become a machine, making it work however possible.
It's mainly about running up and down flights of stairs, isn't it? Isn't that
genuinely, yes. No, everything I'm doing in terms of training is pretty good right now, but I just need to fight more because I have some just emotional responses. Like I sparred with a girlfriend the other day, and I cried almost the whole time while fighting her. She's a lot smaller than me, and I punched.
And you felt bad.
Awful, and I punch very hard, and I know that I do, and that's what they keep telling me is the thing that's my edge is that I punch very hard, which I think is because I have a background of weightlifting. And I just felt awful. She's small, and I didn't even really have to try. Not that she was not a good fighter. I'm just a lot bigger than her, and I was like, this makes me feel like a absolute piece of shit. And she would walk towards me, and I would start crying. So the biggest thing I have right now is having to reframe boxing as a sport and not as violence in my head. Physically, things are okay. Mentally, I hate it. And I just have to get through that. So that's my challenge. And I was actually talking to a therapist about it to be like, hey, this is a big hurdle that I'm having trouble crossing. And he was like, look at it as a video game. You get hit, you lose a point, you hit them, you gain a point. And do that in your head while fighting. And that will probably help. And I was like, that is genius. That almost definitely will help me reframe the entire sport as not being about hitting women and instead being about competitive combat. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. Otherwise, went to DICE last week, did see both Austin and Troy in Vegas. Went out to
Did you go to that one restaurant that Troy likes in Vegas? Which restaurant did you go to?
No, because they didn't have any bookings available.
Cool.
So we went to, I wish I could tell you, Super Frica, I think it's called. It's an Italian restaurant that I guess we just picked Italian and didn't realize that it's a whole Vegas thing where they also have weird psychedelic shows while you eat.
Nice.
So that was a ride.
Nice.
And then I saw Austin
out.
at the awards itself. I'm pretty sure Austin was very drunk. I'm pretty sure. I don't want to air you out here, Austin, while you're not present.
I'm pretty sure this is really cruel what you're doing. Austin, he gets swept up in the moments of award ceremonies. You know, he's very excited.
He loves an award.
He loves to celebrate his peers. Okay,
exactly.
and maybe to your untrained boxer brain, you see that as drunk, but actually it's much deeper than that. It's a really
you're right.
Important
whatever pretentious bullshit Mike just said, that's what it is. But it was an interesting experience to me. You've been in the games industry a long time, Mike, and you know a lot of people. I'm not drinking because of the fight. And I'm used to using alcohol to make myself feel comfortable. And when we talk about networking on this show, obviously going to something like DICE is huge. DICE is where
Massive.
A lot of people go to pitch games that they're working on. That's a very big thing. And going to DICE and not drinking, I was a bit worried about how I would do socially because you have to get over all the social anxiety.
There's definitely a drinks culture in games as well,
massive
which is a
drinks
problem.
culture in the games,
which is a
top
problem.
to bottom.
Yeah.
It's almost pressured. I had my first experience of I ordered a Coke, and the bartender said, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I really thought we'd be doing something more exciting tonight." And I was like, wow. So first time I've had people judge me for not drinking, and I was like, is that because it's a games industry event? I don't know. But it turns out was fine. A little bit weird to get over, but then I was okay. And I ended up feeling like not drinking at these events is more of a superpower. And then I was like,
100%.
I remember everything everyone's saying to me. I can have coherent conversations with them. And when they're drunk, you actually don't feel that socially awkward because everybody just talks so much.
Yep.
So I wanted to share that anecdote.
It's true. I have been the man who's got a Coke that's definitely a JD and Coke promise for about 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
And it's a superpower. Yeah, 100%. If you can get past that kind of the discomfort that everyone else is drinking and you're not, it's great. For me as well, it's just it's tough to explain to folks who aren't in games. the most important, powerful people in games are at an event like DICE, and I don't want to make a tit of myself, basically.
Right.
Sorry, let me reframe it. I want to make less of a tit of myself because I'm definitely going to fuck up. I'm definitely going to say something stupid. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But like, I'm definitely like, I'm very aware that I'm on. And you as well. Like, we're both people, like you say, who know people, who have faces that are out there.
There's a weird thing about like an event like DICE, for anyone who's been in the industry for a while, where I'll be in a conversation with a group of people and maybe not know some of them, and then, sorry about the dog and the squeaky toy, partway through the conversation realize they knew who I was the whole time. I just didn't know who they were. So you do have to be very on, and it's like we said, there's a very prevalent drinking culture in the games industry. Like when we talk about networking, which really is just an elaborate way of saying meeting cool people that you'd like to work with. That's all it is. And you do have to do it. And I do think it's very important. And I will advocate for being extremely socially awkward. And people make assumptions about me when they meet me all the time because I don't make a great first impression. That's definitely an issue that I have.
Is that true?
Yeah, people tend to think that I'm really like standoffish because I am. Usually when I first meet people, I just like, I'm kind of like, cool, hi. But it's socially awkward. It's not that I'm judging them or anything like that. I'm just not great with meeting people.
Okay.
At least I've been told. There's nothing I can do about it, but I had previously used alcohol to make myself feel a little bit more comfortable at events like that. Now I can't. I was like, how is this going to go? And I ended up just feeling a lot better for it. I know that I embarrassed myself once. I don't even imagine these people remember this, but there was a guy at DICE who was being just a drunk dickhead.
I think of 10 people it probably is.
Well, to a pretty extreme extent. This guy was slipping, he got like 10 hotel room keys made for his room and was slipping them into women's hands at DICE. So he's a man who works in games and was just slipping his room key to women at DICE. Like, quite shitty. That's not common at the DICE Awards. That is not a common thing that happens at this event. He was, like, very shitty.
When you said guys drunk, I'm like, I can think of, like, 8 people who I know, but that doesn't sound like someone I would know. Like, that sounds like someone
So he was, like, a
awful.
business side, less a dev side, so, like, a sort of outside of the scene, but it was, like, not
circles,
something that is commonly done, but it is something that happened sort of recently. Yeah, very gross. And he, I think, called me a bitch because I wouldn't give him my phone number. And so I was talking to someone from, I think it was, maybe I shouldn't say the name of the studio. But I was talking to someone from a studio. And this guy walks up to me again. And at this point I was drunk. And I was just rude to him. So the guy that I was talking to didn't have any context of this dude being rude. And I'm a really big fan of the games that they make. And he walks up and he's like, who is he? And I introduced this guy. And then he was like, oh, cool. And then I made some joke about how he probably didn't know any of the games that the studio had made. I was like, have you heard of this game? What'd you think of it? But I was super rude to him. And I remember that being a thing that I only did because I was drunk and I was mad at a man. That was very unprofessional that I shouldn't have done. That I don't know if anyone will remember me doing that or even think about it again. But I was like, that's an alcohol thing where I really wanted to be rude to this guy because I felt like he was a piece of shit. But who did it serve? It didn't really offend him. I was just being rude. There was no... That it was just trying to take a stab at somebody just to probably make myself feel better about being uncomfortable around him or whatever. A thing that would not have happened without alcohol.
I think
probably think about all the time.
I think probably the guy who you're worried about embarrassing yourself in front of probably picked up on what was going on there.
He called me mean though. He made a comment. He was like, "Oh, you don't have to do that," because I was like, "Oh yeah, name 10 of their games." So I don't know that he did. In any case, okay. I don't need to air out the personal trauma I went through with being mean to somebody. But I feel like it's a thing that you don't need to use it as advice. And like networking is a huge thing that we talk about on the show. And I do think it's really important. And you should go up and talk to people and say hi and then leave. Like, I think that's also a thing that I try to do is if it's someone I'm a fan of, I go say hi. And then I'm like, but I'm not going to take up your time. And then you just walk away so that you don't hover and make them uncomfortable. And alcohol can make that worse. So I'm here to advocate before this of like, I'm boxing, I can't drink, or I'm not drinking. It's okay to not drink at the games industry events. I'd go further and say, you will feel better.
Yeah, I think if you're starting in the industry, if you're a young person coming into the industry, don't drink at game events. Just on 5 different levels, just don't drink.
Great way to make a mistake.
Yeah,
but
or for bad actors to target you.
True.
Well,
yeah,
which is not,
What are you eating? Nothing. Okay. Yeah, it went a lot smoother than I expected. Like I said, I ended up feeling like everyone else was silly and I was not. Not in a way that I judged anybody, just that I was like, talking to drunk people is actually very easy.
It is.
You don't really have
friend.
to say much. Yeah. And like, you know, I still saw the people I love and like I saw Vince Zampella, and every time that's usually where I see him most, and just gave him a huge compliment. And I have no idea if he was drinking or not, but like doing that without alcohol probably made it seem more genuine as well. That I was like, you're so good at what you do, dude. It's crazy. It was just, yeah, big fan. And it's nice to see everyone. Nice to see Austin. Nice to see Troy. Obviously, no Mike, devastatingly. Not present. Are you allowed to talk about what you were doing?
I'm just actually no, I can't. I just realized. I'll tell you after we've recorded.
Well, I know what you were doing. I just wasn't sure if you were allowed to talk about it yet.
No, I'm not. No.
That is all good.
So, yeah, your dog's eating your plant. I don't know if that's a problem. If we're worried about that,
he is eating a green chew toy that looks like a plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, he's all right. That is do you like my plants? I feel like I've done a great job.
I do like your plants.
I hung some things.
Your background's always impressive. You've got you're hitting that perfect level with the tastefulness of the LEDs. Like the strip lighting is like,
that's all there is.
You're at the right level. Like it's like, okay, that's nice. It's tasteful. It's doing the job. Yeah.
I feel like it really does almost look like a gamer dungeon in the amount of like merchandise that I have. This is a wall of games I have worked on. But the plants, I think,
it's a hell of a flex though. The plants help. Like any nature, any sense of like, it just makes the place feel human. But I love the flex of having the stuff you've worked on behind you as well.
I was like, I need to put something on this fucking door. All right, let's have some credits.
I'm going to buy every piece of. I mean, my shelf is at this point like 70% Tron merchandise.
I have
so
a lot.
I can't
this whole
really
shelf
judge.
is God of War. That's Kratos right there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of God of War. But awesome. I feel pretty good about the background. The dog is not eating any plants. But since I have you today, Mike, and we don't have very long, we really only have another 15 minutes, outside of saying, hey, games industry events, you can go and you don't need to drink. Have you seen any of the footage for Suicide Squad, the game?
Do you know, I've seen everyone talking about it, and I opened the YouTube video this morning to watch, and then haven't got to it yet, but I've heard people are less than happy with it's a live service game, right? But they're not calling it that. Is that what it is?
Basically, yeah. And that's what I'm not going to ask you to like dunk on a game you haven't seen or anything like that, but I did want to explore this. Rocksteady is known for making the Arkham series, which is a very beloved single player Batman series. That's what they're known for doing. That's what people really like from them.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, why do you think a studio that's known for that, instead of going for a standalone Wonder Woman or Superman game, they have DC license, obviously that's huge, that's what everyone loves them for, and they performed quite well. Why do you think they pivot a studio like Rocksteady that hard?
So I obviously don't know, so this is all just supposition. That's the disclaimer I need to give.
He feels very strongly about Suicide Squad.
He's got a very strong opinion. I feel very, I hate when YouTubers, which I guess in this context I'm temporarily a YouTuber, like just applying like this is the facts of the thing. So definitely massive pinch of salt. I think the biggest argument, like genuinely, for when these kind of things happen is I think the audience doesn't realize the scale difference between different parts of the games industry. So if you're making a single player campaign, like a AAA kind of single player game, there is a limit to your potential for success with that kind of game. And to the extent that single player AAA experiences generally only make viable sense if, for example, you have a high quality console you want to sell via those games. And that's why we see those games going more and more towards platforms rather than third-party publishers.
I think that's the reason I've said repeatedly that you don't really have to worry about Sony stopping making single-player games, because they do that to sell you hardware, not to sell games.
Yeah.
And it works because people want to play God of War, they want to play Horizon, they want to play whatever.
And to an extent, they're also capping a gap in the audience. They know that there will be enough multiplayer games for PlayStation 6.
Right.
And they can kind of allow that to happen. Like most choices a platform holder makes are strategic. They are trying to plug a gap or trying to make brilliant, beautiful art essentially that sells their platform.
Yeah.
Totally valid. So when you're talking about like a third party, so Warner Brothers, they are looking understandably at the massive amount more profit made in the multiplayer space or in these kind of live service games. and making a bet. The reality is they are walking. When you're looking at AAA, they are making an enormous cash bet every game they make. They're spending tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on a game. There is a ceiling to single player games that makes that a relatively low return bet. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they can go and take that same team and make a bet on something that theoretically could be Destiny, could be Fortnite, that's an easier pitch. You would think there's like a common sense thing. And this is definitely something like early in my career I didn't get, where you go, well, why don't more AAA studios just make lots of small bets on interesting things? And the reality is, it's not worth it for them. They're spending a bunch of money to make a game anyway. They should make the game that has the highest potential return from a business point of view. Whatever, as an audience member, we feel about that does make sense on a business level, I think.
I think I've probably spoken about this on the show before, but I'd interviewed a bunch of people about this, and I used to watch all of the or listen to all of the shareholder phone calls, and I think I want to get back into doing that because it's such an interesting way to learn about actual strategies. I say to everybody who wants to get into games media, do that, because most YouTubers are not doing that. Most people aren't doing that, and they're not hard to get access to. And it was Activision specifically that had this thing about comparing video games to other forms of entertainment medium and hours of monetization. If you buy a video game... He's chewing part of my Far Cry toy. Banjo has a lot of energy today, apparently. It's fine, you can have that one. It was like, if you compare video games to movies are $15 for 1 hour or an hour and a half. A video game can be $60 for 200 hours. So that is a poor rate of monetization per hour. And that's the appeal of a live service game, is that you are able to monetize more hours of gameplay. Plus, it's easier to sell one game and repeatedly monetize it than it is to sell 5 games in a year, because some people won't buy 5 games in a year. So the strategy makes a lot of sense. But what I wanted to ask you about specifically is, when you're doing deals, obviously I know you can't talk about a lot of these, but with like an outside company, how often do they approach you and say, hey, we want a Bithell game? Or are you getting approached and having people come in and ask for monetization strategies? Like when it comes to loot boxes, is that a thing that something will be pitched to you from someone on the business side? Like how does the monetization come into a Bithell Games game from the jump?
So it's it's always one of the first questions, like on a broad level, like how are you going to monetize this game and what's the business model for your game? How many units do you think the game's going to sell? What price are you going to sell it for? What's going to be its drop off?
Like straight away.
100%.
Wow, because I would have thought you couldn't figure that out until you've made a bit of the game.
Oh, you can't. But they want to know it anyway. Huh. Yeah, but it's all estimation. But yeah, no, absolutely, because ultimately they're choosing, especially if they're funding it, and obviously we've talked on the show before, there's lots of different shapes of deals, but if they're putting money or even just time into something, they want to know that time's worthwhile. So yeah, no, absolutely. From the jump, they want to know how much money do you realistically think this is going to make is totally one of the reasonable questions that's asked. As it goes on, you'll then, based on the kind of game it is, then you'll start to have conversations. With our games, we're a special case. You don't come to my company if you want to make a looter shooter with
has anybody ever asked?
It's come up a couple of times. We definitely had conversations about free to play kind of stuff has come up in the past when we've been talking to people. But no. We make a certain kind of thing and a certain scope of thing and our audience as well as a certain kind of audience. So most people who talk to us have done their homework and understand that that's probably not going to happen as well. I think I'm on the record as being against almost every form of monetization. So absolutely they know, they Google kind of where we've stood on this stuff in the past. But no, it's ultimately it is a business, and especially at the level of the kind of a publisher or someone funding a game, for them it's literally a business. Like they care, they want to make good product, but ultimately they're trying to make money. So yeah, unless you're talking to someone who has a wildly different revenue stream that games are supporting, that's going to be a thing. What's interesting is we have found a lot of those paths. So when we've worked with platform holders, it isn't so much about the bottom line of how much a game's going to make. They're trying to sell a new piece of hardware, or they're trying to kind of promote an image of what their console does, or what kinds of games are available on their console. Also, honestly, it comes up with licensed games. With John Wick, we had a lot of conversations about, obviously, they wanted to make money, and that game did make a lot of money, but they also wanted to kind of plug a gap in the schedule, remind people John Wick existed, be associated in the game space with like original creative ideas like they were in the film space. So there are all these
an interesting
other
thing where people
things.
might approach you because they want a specific image. Like
100%.
it wants to be seen as, I don't want to say artsy, but that's the word that's coming to my head.
You called me pretentious earlier. I think that's the word.
Well, what you said was pretentious.
Well, it's very pretentious.
Pretentious.
Yeah. I think working with us makes a statement. I think we specifically are definitely known by industry as a weirdly unpredictable company that makes strange choices.
Very different stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, and that's partly just because I have a very short attention span, but it's also like something that is interesting, and people know if they ask us for a pitch. We get asked to pitch for things that frankly are way out of our league because people want to see what the fuck we'll come up with. And a lot of the time we're laughed out. One day I will tell the story of like there's a specific mega IP that we pitched for once where we made a pitch for it, we submitted it via the proper channels. There was a scheduled like massive meeting we were going to go into to pitch this thing, and I never got to go to that meeting because I sent in all of our pitch documentation and received LOL from the IP owner, and that was the last conversation we ever had.
Oh my god.
But that's it. We're taking big swings, and those big swings pay off, and we end up with awesome stuff like Tron and John Wick and all these things. Because when that clicks, when the people on the other side of the desk are excited, you can do really interesting work. And honestly, it's good to prune out the people early who would not want to go on a weird journey with us. So yeah, it's But yeah, I think all of this comes into play, and I think the audience consistently assumes that developers are more cynical and that money people are less cynical than they are.
Strongly agree. I've been called shill of the games industry before because of the amount of times on YouTube that I try to advocate for, well, this wasn't a dev decision. And also, the shit you don't like is probably something that somebody on the dev team also didn't like, and things aren't that simple. Like, why didn't they think of this? They did. I assure you they did. That's definitely a thing. And even like the money people are still just trying to fight the beast that is capitalism, which is we must have constant growth. They're not all inherently evil either.
And win. No, that's the thing is I don't think morality, I mean, there's obviously terrible business practices occasionally, but like I don't think morality comes into a decision around genre and monetization. Sure. It ultimately is guided by how much do we think we're going to spend on this versus how much could we make,
and the benefit of the purpose of a company being that they have to grow, which is a nightmare. And I'm glad I'm not in that position, and I just get to write. I think I might have said, somebody asked me if I like wanted to have a pathway to be senior writer at Sony, and I was like, no. I don't want to take more meetings, and I don't want more responsibility. Could I just write, please? Let me just write. I would like to not be promoted. I'm good. Yeah. So another thing that I think is really interesting about the Rocksteady situation specifically, Arkham Knight came out 6 years ago?
It was a while, wasn't it?
A while ago.
Yeah.
And when we talk about a Rocksteady game, and I think this is an interesting thing industry-wide, is when somebody talks about like a Santa Monica Studio game or a Rocksteady game or a whatever game, half of that dev team is probably completely different people. And it's 100%. A weird identity thing where like I think a Bithell game makes sense for as long as you are there. Not to say that the team doesn't have a tremendous impact on the games that you make, but like as a creative director, Corey is doing that at Santa Monica Studio. He's been there since God of War 2, which he directed.
Yeah.
He's franchise director. That's what Corey does. He's the person who decides what happens to the franchise, and he's been there for a long time. He's left, he's come back, whatever. We talk about like even a Rockstar game. I don't know what that means when certain people leave. How does a studio even keep an identity like Rocksteady when surely half of them aren't there anymore? I don't think it's the same creative director working on Suicide Squad. Like, how does the DNA of a developer even really exist when the teams change so much? And I think that's getting more and more relevant where, like, 90s Rare was like 10 people and they were all the same people. It's so different now that I don't really know what an identity even means for a studio unless they have similar creative leadership.
I'm definitely of the opinion, ironically, given my job and the name of the company, I genuinely don't think creative leadership defines ultimately that much about what the studio makes. Like,
Interesting.
to be clear, I'm a curator. I bring it together. For me, I think the analogy of like a city is a better one. Like, I can be the mayor of the city. I can make decisions. I can pull stuff together. I can lead. But ultimately, New York's going to be the same once I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like culturally, I think when you're dealing with things, it's easy with,
But like if everybody at your team leaves.
Yeah.
And you have a whole new team, but it's still Bithell Games. Surely
that to me would
they
be
make
very
different.
different. They would, but if half my team left, it would still be. I think the team would carry would carry the DNA forward. If half the population of London left tomorrow, it would still be London.
That's true.
Like, I think when you're dealing with such large groups of people, I think there is an institutional memory and an institutional culture that transcends any one individual, and especially transcends whichever, dude is the O2 mouthpiece of that company. And
That's interesting. Because you're probably right that the onboarding process is the same regardless of who the HR person is, right? So like if I get onboarded at Rocksteady and they say, here are our values, here's the little document we have, here's the slideshow about what we do and who we are. You could hire a different person to do your onboarding, but that document's still going to stay the same and the training's still going to stay the same. It's not I don't have the thesis that it's completely different. It's just something I wanted to ask you about. It's a very interesting
It's ship of Theseus, right? It's a ship of Theseus. Like, it's ultimately, which now everyone knows because it was in One Division, right? The idea of if you take a part of something and so like I feel like game companies are much more like that. I think you could end up with a completely different ship, but because you did it in an incremental, slow process, it would still be the same ship. I think game companies are similar. I think we rush too quickly towards assuming that the director is like the creative mind behind the whole thing. I think
that varies. Like, I
probably
feel like, I guess this is just so chatty right now. I had to take him out to poop right before recording this. He's like probably like half done. That's when he poops the most. When he barks the most. I feel like Corey is distinctly the creative director, but we have many people from different divisions, like Raf from the art department, and then Bruno, just gameplay, who both just were able to accept awards for God of War Ragnarok at the DICE Awards, which is fantastic. I really like both of them and play soccer with Bruno, and he's just one of the nicest people on the planet. So it's lovely to see wonderful colleagues get awarded. But I guess they've all been there for a long time, 10 plus years. And they're all very, of their specific departments, they set a tone. So I guess
but the tone is then executed by others. Like, and I think I like it's. I'm not diminishing. I'm definitely not diminishing myself. I'm really proud of the work I do. I'm sure the same is true of those guys. But the for me, there is a difference between. It's about priority and importance. Like, I think it's possible for me to have a massive influence on the work I do, but also for, if I wasn't there, other people would continue and do.
I guess you're right. If I flip the perspective, there's plenty of stuff that I have pitched or brought to my job that nobody else had anything to do with, really.
Awesome.
And now, what the hell?
in the great relay race, I've got to go because I'm getting the tap because Kerry's got to get on a work call. So I will pass you over to Austin. Bye.
I'm literally just saying hi, and now goodbye.
All right. Hey, Austin. Nice to see you. Why are you in a car?
Because I'm on my way to a meeting. So yeah, no dedicated audio from me. Sorry.
Are you driving?
I might be driving.
Be safe, please. Thanks for watching Play, Watch, Listen, everybody.
Think how viral this will go if I am in a cataclysmic car accident.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't even jinx it. We don't want that to happen.
It's okay. I'm on a very quiet suburban street.
It does look nice wherever you are.
Yeah, we have no clouds.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. It's like you can see the snow outside on the mountains in LA right now. It's crazy. In any case, I'm Alanah. I'm a video game writer. That's Austin Winter. He's a video game composer. And thanks for watching Play, Watch, Listen, everybody. Bye.
See ya.